43-22 is the final. Michigan wins its back-to-back Big Ten championship this fine Saturday night here in Indianapolis. Sunday morning now in Indianapolis here, Sam Webb, and I'm Josh Newkirk for the Michigan Insider. Let's just dive right in. Obviously, this was a game that, Michigan came in heavy favorites, and it started off, they started off slugging, and they got the job done. J.J. McCarthy and Donovan Edwards on the offensive side of the ball put Michigan on their shoulders today.
Yeah, as we get started, I just remember back in the COVID year, JJ committed to that class. The season is kind of circling the drain. They visit that weekend. They were playing Wisconsin that COVID year, and Wisconsin kind of beat them really bad. And I remember talking to JJ. He's like, "Look, I'm sticking with this class. I'm gonna bring other guys with me. Guys who don't want to come, that's fine. Mm-hmm. They'll be looking up at us when we win the championship," is essentially what he said. A couple of months later, Donovan commits at a time where clearly there's a lot in question. And they said, when we come, we're going to win championships. And here they are. So you look at them and what they did against Ohio State last week, felt like JJ picked up right where he left off. Mm-hmm. from a feel standpoint. He started this game in a real rhythm, some great throws. I mean, the throw he made as he was rolling to the sideline, he found Ronnie back across his body. The back shoulder that he threw on the 50-50 ball to Colston Loveland, who said, if I'm even, I'm open. I mean, he was making throws like that. He made another throw, rolling to his right, back across his body, and hit Luke Schoonmaker in the end zone. He was making ball player plays, but then he was also making the fundamental plays. Like you see JJ is always going to be able to do the ball player stuff. That's just in his DNA, right? The next level for him is going to be when he does all the fundamental, all the quarterback stuff, the footwork and tying the footwork to the throws. And I was talking to some coaches, I was talking to Borges about it. He said this was his most fundamentally sound game of the season from a footwork and mechanics standpoint. So he was really dialed in. Had one bad decision where he tried to do a little too much and threw an interception, but that was truly the only, bad decision of the day. He was on in every other respect. And then Donovan Edwards. I the mental toughness for that kid, that young man, his hand injury, it's almost like, he is able to compartmentalize pain and compensate. Not to the point where he isn't responsible. So Michigan comes out in the second half, and I remember thinking this opening drive of the second half is a real key when it comes to tone setting. Because Purdue was moving the football, and we'll talk about defense. So they come out, and the number one run play on the run sheet, I don't know if this is really what they say, but I'm just saying the most successful run play for them this year has been duo. When they need a play, when they need some big yards, when they're looking for a big play on the duo. So that's exactly what they ran. He bends it around the edge, runs 60 yards. Now, Donovan, first of all, he had outrun one angle. He wasn't going to outrun the second one, but he steps out of bounds. And I know some people are like, why is he stepping out of bounds? It's his right hand. Yeah. So you got to be responsible, right? So that's a dude using his head. Get out of bounds. Don't put your hand at risk. Live to fight another day. They wind up scoring a touchdown there. And then they run a split zone. You see his vision. This is what you couldn't see early in the game against Ohio State. He eventually got there. He is a very instinctive runner. And the great ones can kind of see the hole before it opens up. They can kind of see where things are going to spring based upon the blocks. Right. He was thinking about his hands so much early in the Ohio State game, you didn't see that instinctive running. As the game went on, he started to get it. This was a very instinctive run. He's running a split zone. He sees a hole backside, cuts back, and then after that, he's a man possessed.
27 yards.
Yeah, running up the field
and
through
one
3
of
or
his
4
better
tackles.
runs of the season, I believe. And Harbaugh mentioned 401 yards in the past 2 games, 2 of the biggest games of the season, of his career. He mentioned that he's been doing this not only here, but in high school, led West Bloomfield to a state championship. So that recruiting class, those super softs, as Harbaugh alluded to and what you just discussed, are definitely paying dividends for Michigan this season and beyond. We'll get to the next games later on in this discussion. Let's switch it over to the defense. Michigan's defense, once again, it's a second half defense, because this Purdue was giving them fits in that first half. It was 14-10 at half. They were going down the field, and they're holding the field goals. Plus, A guy that, you talked about JJ saying we're staying, being a leader in that class. A guy, Will Johnson, that we covered, and he was a leader in Michigan's last recruiting class. This current freshman class came up with 2 big interceptions of his young career, and they were spectacular interceptions.
Well, Aiden O'Connell is a good quarterback.
Yeah.
Right? Michigan played a lot of zone in the first half, and they're a spot drop team, and a precision West Coast passing attack can find holes in a team, a spot dropping team like Michigan if you don't get to him. And Michigan wasn't really able to get to him. He got in the rhythm. I think he only had like 2 or 3 incompletions in the first half. They did a good job of clamping down in the red zone, held them to a lot of field goals all day, but they had the rhythm passing game going. And that's why, coming out in the second half, it was very, very key, that the offense set a good tone, which they did, and then defensively get some key stops, right? So what were the key adjustments? I think Michigan played more man in the second half. By what percentage, I don't know, but it seemed like they were pressing them a little more, not just conceding some openings in zone. And then young Will Johnson. Josh, I know we both been watching that kid since he was in middle school. And so you could kind of see what was coming, right? He's competing with the high schoolers as an 8th grader, and he keeps sprouting bigger, getting faster, and you can start to see the confidence. And so, they kind of spoon-fed him. Mm-hmm. Then once you get deep into get later in Michigan State and beyond, he starts playing more and more and more. And against Ohio State, he was big. He was big against Marvin Harris.
I think you saw his growth really skyrocket once he got that first interception in the Rutgers game.
Yeah, man.
And then you sort of saw him sort of blossom in front of our eyes, and then it really, materialized tonight, this morning, in this Big Ten championship win. And he was crucial down the stretch run. And without Will Johnson, I don't know if this Michigan defense is where it's at right now. He's definitely become not only just a contributor, but a key player on this defense.
No question. That was the biggest difference defensively in the second half. We could talk about they played more man as the permanent adjustment, but the biggest difference from first half to second half was Will Johnson. That play he made in the end zone, Vance is a real stickler for hey, man, look, understand where your help is. And so he said, man, he would not let that receiver not only would he not let the receiver get outside where he didn't have any help, once he walled him off from the outside, he jumped around him and intercepted the football.
Right.
And then the second interception, it was like he ran the route for the dude.
Right.
It was
in the pocket.
Yeah, it was, and these were moments where Purdue's driving. So, again, that young fella stepped up and made some key plays reminiscent of the guy whose jersey he's wearing. I'm not saying he's going to be that guy, but he was making plays like that guy did in his freshman year. Who knows what the trajectory of Will Johnson's career will be. But he was a game changer tonight. And I thought, Donovan had a big game. Big game. JJ had a big game. MVP in this game, to me, was Will Johnson.
That's who I voted for, Sam. So, we broke down the win, the offense, the defense. Obviously, this has been a special season. The most wins in Michigan football history, in all the history of this program. 13-0, most wins in a singular season. But there's more games to be played. The semifinals are coming up, likely going to Tempe for the Fiesta Bowl. The team, the number 3 seed, yet to be determined.
Right.
We're guessing maybe TCU,
I think it
maybe
should be
Ohio
TCU.
State. Who knows? Nobody did us any favors this weekend with all the teams from the other conferences losing. But I think that TCU, but regardless of the opponent, last year Michigan, it seemed, sort of was satisfied. They made it. They have never gone that far before. They lost in the Orange Bowl to eventual national champions, Georgia Bulldogs.
So
now this year, this team is different. They know what it's like to be successful. Back-to-back Big Ten champs. What's the mindset sort of got to be this time around? To not only they're going to go to the playoffs, but to be successful and maybe have a chance to win a national championship.
Yeah, so I think the biggest difference this year is you got a guy at quarterback that you can put the game on his shoulders.
Okay, I know that's something that we discussed.
That's it. So, think about it. I've talked about this a ton. For everything that people said about Stetson Bennett last year, I think none of us, even Georgia fans, didn't know he had that in him.
Right.
That game against Michigan, which was a really good defense, it was the level of control and command that he had of that game where those coaches said, Stetson Bennett, go win it for us. That's exactly what they did. Josh, I'm not exaggerating. He 13, 14 RPOs in the first half. That is a coach telling his quarterback, go win it. And Stetson Bennett was doing it. Michigan didn't quite have that quite. They had enough to get to the show, but not enough to close it out. I think they do this year when you consider the maturation that we've seen from J.J. McCarthy here down the stretch. It would be great if you had Blake. I feel for Blake because Blake would be your Heisman Trophy winner right now.
I agree.
If he doesn't get hurt when you consider what happened to everyone else around you. But Donovan has stepped up in a huge way. The receivers have some confidence. Your offensive line is better. And we've started to see some playmaking emerge defensively. Michigan can beat anyone. Got to feel confident in that. Don't know who it'll be. I think 3 seeds should still be TCU.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, they beat Kansas State during the regular season. They lost to Kansas State in overtime. I mean, that's a close game compared to Ohio State, who got the brakes beat off of them at home, right? So, but Ohio State should be in it. I mean, I think they're in
it by default. Nobody wanted to win.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, Bama has 2 losses. Say what you want by it being 4 points, but it's still 2 losses. Ohio State should be the 4th team, and I don't think I see some Michigan fans kind of nervous about. I think it has more to do with you want to be able to stick it in. You don't want to give Ohio State second life, another life.
Absolutely.
You got to look at it different. You get a chance to give them a second death. You don't have to play Ohio State. You get to play Ohio State. I think that's how Michigan is looking at it. Like, man, we get to play them again? Hell yeah, let's do that. Unfortunately, I think if it happens, it'll be in the championship game because I just don't think you can put a team who was sitting at home, who got destroyed on their home field, ahead of a team who played in a conference championship and barely lost to a team that they beat during the regular season.
I don't think they want to have that conference rematch to start off the playoffs. We'll
Right.
see, and they would love. Hey, guess what? You can say what you want. What was the most watched football game in the past 10 years?
Michigan, Ohio State.
And if that was a national title game, what would be the most watched football game in the past 10
Michigan, Ohio State.
So there we go.
Yeah.
But we have our answers. We have our sort of previews coming up. But hey, that's going to wrap up our coverage here from Lucas Oil Stadium in downtown Indianapolis.